Yo, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to the live stream today. We're going to explore this new Bitcoin soft fork, Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 444. Not in reference of Josh Mandel, surprisingly, but that 444 keeps popping up. We are going to get to that. I'm going to explore it in depth, actually read it out basically for the first time myself and figure out what is going on, what is being proposed. I'm going to talk about how likely I think it's going to happen, some pushback towards it, and so on. But before we do, for the early comers to the show, everybody who's been here before knows that I like to throw some coins in the wishing well. This is the promotional program that Bitcoin Well has. And last time I did this, somebody won 210,000 Satoshis, which is incredible. So can we do it again? Do we have that much luck? Not sure. But if you want to try to win some Satoshis, you can get out your phone, open up your Lightning wallet, whether you use Coinos, Wallet of Satoshi, what have you. You open up your receiving tab, you open up your camera, you scan this QR code. If you're the first person to do so, you'll win 411 Satoshis. Not 2,100 or 210,000, but it's something. We got a few people in the chat here. Hello, patiently waiting. Joel, nice to see you. I remember, Joel, you're the first person to ever gift subs on or memberships on my channel. I currently run Bitcoin Core and want to learn more about knots. Hello. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about knots. We'll talk definitely more about the soft fork and so on. One more toss in the wishing well here. I got quite a few points, and we'll do a couple of these at the end as well. Last time the 210 happened at the end. 626 sats to the first person to scan this. All right. And yeah, how's everybody doing today? We got 21 people in the chat. I think, let's see here. Dang. I'm trying to stream to Zapstream for the first time. Oh, I think we're streaming. Yep, we are streaming on Zapstream, which is a Nostr platform. We got 2 people there right now. That's awesome. And people can donate directly on there. Actually, I'm going to broadcast it to Nostr right now. Awesome. Sweet. New member, Joel. Appreciate that. All right. Okay. So we're all set up now. We're all good to go. I'm just going to, a couple little technical things before we get into it. I'm just going to open up my wallet as well, which is another way people can donate. It's this address right here. You can send in some sats if you feel so inclined. All right, let's get into today's video, which is all about, let's see, I'm going to bring it up on here actually. Share this tab instead. This is BIP 444, the reduced data temporary soft fork. This is the pull request 2017. And right here, we have this code that is currently being commented on by anybody with a GitHub account, but basically it has to be relevant, courteous, all of this kind of stuff. Otherwise, you will get your comment removed, just to keep it in line with actual discussion on this topic. So basically, at any point here, you can add in a comment. So this comment was added after, the third line, and a comment was replied, another one here, and so on. But you can actually click this button, and for some reason it takes forever to load, and you can just get the straight up information of what the BIP is. And I'll actually link this. I'm going to link this in the chat right now. That's a good question, MH. How can a soft fork be temporary? So essentially, there's a block height where this expires. And here we go. Let's try to get rid of this. Yeah, this is like I click one of these buttons. It's one of these, and then all of a sudden it takes like a minute to actually register. But I have a better solution that I'll get to at a certain point. Essentially, Okay, so this is just the raw code here. Essentially, there is a block height where this expires. And within that time frame, there can be more additions to the changes, and also there's a block height when this will get activated, which is not, um, which is basically not set in stone yet. So hello. So I'm actually going to bring up a much better way to view this, but just wanted to share that to you guys so that you can actually view it as well. Let's bring up this. And all right, how does that look? All right. Okay, this is a bit crazy. I'm actually gonna see. That's looks all right. Hopefully, you guys can see that. All right. So this is Cursor. This is a code editing software where you can put code in, you can edit it yourself, and they also have an AI as well. So essentially, what I did was I copied the entire proposal here, which is right here on this part here, and it's all designated by lines now. And essentially what you can do is you can ask the AI specific parts about this, which is how I've been learning a little bit. So I've already started. Essentially, I asked, let's actually start here at the top. I created a markdown. I explained the specifications. So the block height is to be disclosed for the starting, and then the ending will be block height 987424. So this essentially starts sometime roughly in, well, actually, we don't know when it's going to start, but it'll end in roughly February of 2027. These are the 7 rules that are being pushed to be implemented. So script pub key size limits of 34 bytes. And this will essentially cap all the output data. So UTXO sizes will be limited to this. So each transaction is essentially limited, unless there's an op return of 83 bytes included into it. So rationale script pub keys are kept in the UTXO set. So this is to limit the UTXO set bloat, which is important considering UTXOs are kept in either RAM or highly accessible and need to be sort of checked all the time, and need to be held in a pruned node. Modern usage uses 34 bytes for these types of wallets, and committing to witness. So op push data. So these are sort of like, these are, see, there is some knowledge gaps here, but basically what I have information on here is that like all these ops are types of scripts that you can do within Bitcoin. And I'm not 100% sure that like my wording here is accurate, but what I'm saying is that any op of push data exceeding 256 bytes are going to be invalid. So this could become problematic if you already have something with an op push data that's larger than this. But this is a soft fork. So there could still be, which a soft fork is essentially meaning that all the node implementations, everything is still consensus and still valid and still works in a backwards compatible way. So if there's still, this is, you probably should watch my soft fork versus hard fork video that I released last week. It actually doesn't have that many views, so probably a lot of you haven't seen it. But essentially, a soft fork can become rule of law at a certain point if the majority of hash rate implements the soft fork, because if you don't implement it, your block will get orphaned as the soft fork running implementations and miners and hash rate will not see those transactions essentially. So this is all, in a sense, to sum this up, this is all to limit transaction sizes in some sense. So I asked, why is it temporary? Same question, because I was curious about how that worked as well. Same question as MH had. How is this temporary? So basically, its goal is to reduce spam risk now and refine later. So that is one of my contentions with the soft fork, with this soft fork, is that it seems to be being pushed out and sort of rushed quickly, with the attempt to mitigate and stop harmful spam on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, this has been debated. There's already this kind of stuff here, but it's not contiguous. It's sort of split up and hidden, and that makes it different somehow. People are debating that. Is there a legal issue with running a node if it has certain types of data within it? There's a lot of wording in this original proposal here by this anonymous source, which is copying a BIP from Luke Dasher, that specifies a lot of language about legal and moral imperative for you actually implementing the soft fork. Now there's people saying we should actually get rid of that, as it's pretty obvious. People can make up their own decision about how illegal it would be to run a node and all this kind of stuff, and that it's really not important, specifically because it's less about the technical side. So the BIP should remain more focused on the technical aspects of what is being proposed, as opposed to sort of saying, hey, we need to do this for legal reasons, which is a lot of people believe. I don't actually find it, and this is where I differ from a lot of people that are in the Knots camp. I actually don't find it super compelling. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but yeah. So these limits can be improved. So that's why it's temporary, is because this is supposed to just be sort of a patch to. It's kind of weird. It's actually kind of weird how like the dominoes have started to fall, where it's like Core changes something as simple as the default policy for op returns. Just what is default? You can still change it in Core 30 to do 83 bytes on op return, but by default, it's now essentially unlimited, or 100 kilobytes. And that has triggered this response of a soft fork. Whereas if the default just hadn't been changed, then this soft fork wouldn't have been proposed. So it's kind of this weird domino effect that's happening now. And there's people on sort of both sides of the debate that are in agreement on a soft fork, whether it's every single one of these aspects, these technical changes that would be implemented or not. And again, this is just a proposal. This isn't the code that would actually be implemented. The code would have to be developed based on these goals and then implemented into a software update that we could adopt, which flags and signals that us as node runners or us as miners, we will put our support behind this soft fork so that it has a high probability of succeeding, right? And that's what a user-activated soft fork is really roughly defined. So over 1 year timeline to improve. So essentially this limit, so the time to update limits. So limits expire at block 987.424, which is mid 2027, and things can be sort of changed and a new update can be built in that meantime. So how does it expire? It was another question. I wanted to get sort of clarification on that. So basically, after that block, these rules are no longer enforced, even by that same code. And then why is it safe to let it expire? If risks persist, proposals can extend or refine the limits. So it can be extended, right? This is the thing about temporary stuff, is sometimes temporary things are not temporary, but likely changes and refinements and stuff would happen along the way, even if this was implemented in sort of a rushed fashion. Yo, Joel, appreciate the one gifted. That is very kind of you. And yeah, awesome. I really appreciate that. Okay, so I wanted to know explicitly what this what this did to op return is op return was sort of the most contentious part about core version 30 being implemented. So it says rule 1 is the op return exception. So if we go down to rule 1, it's right. Sorry, no, that's not rule 1. Here we go. So why limit script pub keys to 34 bytes? And actually, it looks like rule 2 here is about op return. Says op return outputs are provably unspendable, and nodes do not need to store it in the UTXO set. Historically, up to 83 bytes have been tolerated only to avoid unprovably unspendable spam in other output scripts. So it's sort of like, allowing the spammers to play in the dumpster where they belong, as opposed to littering the streets with their garbage. And no legitimate use cases, and no legitimate uses have ever been found. With the advent of pay to contract and taproot, it is now also possible to commit to external data in the tap tree, making even hypothetical uses of op return deprecated. However, to avoid breaking legacy protocols that still include such outputs, this proposal allows these outputs. So this proposal is restrictive, and because it's a soft fork, and it needs to still allow the basically the already existing transactions and UTXOs that have 83 byte limits in them, so that it still will understand them and see them. So legacy protocols, basically, right here. Yep. So limiting script pub key, I wanted to figure out, because this isn't just about op return, right? Now this soft fork is addressing other types of spam, right? It's talking about taproot, which I haven't got into yet, and it's talking about script pub keys in general. And yeah, so this targets data stored in script pub keys that remain in the UTXO set and burden node operators. So essentially, actually, that didn't really specify much about that, to be honest. I then asked about the legal risks and, got basically AI slop about it. Obviously, it can't really tell me much about the legal risks, but the bottom line is the legal risk is real but uncertain. The stronger motivator is practical sustainability. The emergency framing is not backed by public evidence here, and a reactive rollback creates its own risk. A proactive, time-limited soft fork with a new deployment is more defensible than a retroactive split. So there's also this this way of it being implemented in here, where if something got into the blockchain that was deemed universally not acceptable, that a rollback would actually happen, and that would be the activation of this soft fork. So not only just the ability to activate it sort of proactively in a way of like implementing it during a certain time period of nodes and miners signaling that they accept the soft fork, but actually just like a forced deployment on a rollback to do a rollback, which would be possibly fail, right? Because it would be this rollback, and then it would have to have the vast majority of hash rate to be the longest chain after the rollback. So that part I don't think would actually work. And I think it also creates this problem potentially of if there was like acceptance of the concept of a rollback activation of this, and if there was miner support for it, then it would create an incentive, which is really perverse. It would create an incentive to enforce a double spend activity from somebody that would upload something illegal, right? It's a crazy situation, but we have to go all the way to extremes, right? And then there would be, my understanding of it, and I could be wrong, my understanding of it is if there was enough support to do the sort of the retroactive rollback, essentially temporarily splitting the chain until consensus, or until one chain was deemed the longest again, that would be caused by somebody that could intentionally cause it for the reason of being able to double spend their own coins. Now, how and I'm not certain with the whole concept of that. So that's to be explored more, and if that's even possible or if that's the way it would play out, I'm not 100% sure. But the idea of a rollback in the in the blockchain intentionally, not just because that's how the system works. Like, there can be temporary chain splits all the time. Like, if there's an orphan block, like that's what a temporary chain split is an orphan block, and we're deciding to continue on one chain over the other, and the other one just dies on the rail right there, or at least one block on there is not included, right? But to intentionally do that is something that I am just naturally against. Can I be convinced otherwise with enough logic and reason? Yes, but my natural disposition is to be against something like that, because of the importance of the immutability of the ledger and the system to control itself, as opposed to individuals coercing a change that, whether it's deemed righteous or not, is less important in my eyes than to have something that is harder to control, right? That's what draws me to Bitcoin in a way, is the fiat system is completely controlled, right? There's a central banker, there's the government, they control how much spending and therefore how much money printing. And that is completely unfair. Crypto, it's a small group of people in each one of these cryptos controlling things, making changes. And Bitcoin, in my eyes, is different because of how hard it is to change anything. So that's what makes me think Bitcoin is different than crypto and fiat, is how difficult it is to change something. If it becomes easy to do a rollback every time we don't like a transaction, then that to me is a problem. All right, so all of this needs to be explored like in depth, in like completely, um and you can do this with, obviously, with Cursor, as I'm doing, or even just throwing this into another AI, right? And you're going to get some things that are probably incorrect. You're going to get some biases. It's AI. Don't take everything as, certainty from AI, but it's a learning tool for research to be able to, look up, like, basically you can go like this and just say, okay, what's going on here? Summarize it. You get a quick summary, so you get just a basic understanding, and then you can actually read it and understand, okay, this is what that summary was talking about. At least that's what I find useful. And then from there, I would recommend, and we could do this as well to some degree, we can take a look at this. And obviously, this is just what I had in Cursor here. But if we display with rich diff, we will see all of the people talking, all of the Bitcoiners, all of the devs, and essentially anybody else with real input here. See, this is like, it's confusing how long it takes, actually. Anyway, Joel, opinions on how Satoshi originally meant opcode function to be used, given that they used it to attach the news clip in the Genesis block. Yeah, I mean, so he included that in the Coinbase transaction, which I think, is very limited with what you can do. And essentially miners are still doing that, right? Like, I think Mara has in the Coinbase transaction made in the USA or something like that. Even all like the mining pools and stuff will have just their names in there as well. There's data in that space anyway, and it's sort of like a randomized hash if it isn't something that's specifically included. So I don't see any like major problem in including something in the Coinbase. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry. Uh, I'm not sure. I haven't figured out exactly which one to do here. And then it takes forever. So if you guys have any additional questions about this, I could also throw those into AI. We could discuss it. I could give you my opinion, but I could also, what's going on here? This is so annoying. GitHub needs to figure its GitHub. Yeah, so that's kind of what my thought is. Okay, here we go, finally. So if there's any questions that you have, you could ask a question probably within here too, maybe. But every single one of these, like basically sentence by sentence, is being discussed by people. So this is actually incredibly useful as well, but requires a little bit of time, right? This is going to take time to go through. You're going to have to go through every single one of Jameson Lopp's disagreements with basically every line and rebuttals against that. Yeah, so there's a lot here, and I just think it is quite interesting that this is happening. Like the thing about a soft fork that I talked about in my latest video, or one of my latest videos, was that if there's a majority hash rate agreement and nodes that agree on the soft fork, it can become essentially rule, and it's sort of more coercive. You can't like if you reject it, you're like, so there's the user activated soft fork, there's the user rejected soft fork, I believe it is, and essentially you're just off on doing your own thing because the soft forks are restrictive with the implementations, with the changes they have, and therefore they're not affecting older node runners. They're just continuing to do what they want, and what they see will be different based on that, running that implementation. And the older node runners will see that information in their own way, which is just normal to them. So yeah, not much you can do about a soft fork ultimately. I mean, you can reject it, and there's people thinking, okay, well, maybe this is going to be rejected as well. This is just another push for more exposure. We'll see. A lot of this kind of stuff is we will see, right? How much of this will come to play is really hard to figure out at this point. We're still really early days. This was actually released. Let's see. GitHub is like brutally slow. What's going on here? This is crazy. It's like unusable. I just gotta open up an entirely different tab to use it. It's crazy. Anyway, this was released a little while ago, but not too long ago in the grand scheme of things. So 3 days ago. 3 days ago. Let's see. 3 days ago. 3 days ago, this was released by an anonymous account, basically like a throwaway account, I believe. And it's in reference to a temporary to a proposal by Luke, which is here in the mailing list. This is the public mailing list. Yeah, here we go. So this is a BIP proposal that wasn't explicitly like added to the GitHub as a BIP proposal. It was just explaining what they could do. And then this person, whoever it is, basically created a BIP from that. And this is a public inbox for the mailing list. So if you go here, you can actually see all of the updates essentially, which is probably a good idea to join or to review and to look at. And you can actually go to like Google Groups and put in Bitcoin Dev, and join this and get email updates of all of this. This is all public, right? So limit, this is the BIP proposal here. And it's not so much, I mean, people do discuss things on here as well. There's kind of like these like sectioned off little pieces of how Bitcoin gets developed that you have to pay attention to a bunch of different things, unfortunately. Yeah, so this is another way of just viewing, right, in time, every single new question, answer, discussion around specific parts of the code. It's worth looking into. It's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to try to figure out. And I might have some people on that are more knowledgeable than me. But essentially what I can see here is there's not much that we can do as plebs. I mean, we can voice our concern. If we really think that there's something wrong with this, we could voice it. If we think there's something right about this, we could voice it. And how this will actually look as a soft fork with code being added to the implementations that we run and to an update could look different than this proposal as well, right? Like this proposal is a proposal. It's not written in stone. And I guess we'll see how it all plays out. Bruno says powers that be are playing both sides. They are both psyops. Core is corrupt, and so is Luke and Co. Yeah, I don't know about that. There's people that they have some very fundamental ideas about what's right and what's wrong and how this affects something that's incredibly important to them, which is Bitcoin. And there's nobody in the world that you should 100% agree with, in my opinion, because we are all unique. And if you 100% agree with somebody, you are very susceptible to their beliefs, and you don't actually know their beliefs. You don't know if something's cracked. You don't know if something's changed. You don't know if you're being led somewhere. So I think agreeing with one person entirely, or even a small group of people, is what leads to pretty bad outcomes. You have to be able to look at this and take in all sorts of different information and conclude your own conclusions from it. Just as I talked about how, like, if you're reviewing this with AI, you don't want to just take the AI's word for something. Same is true with anybody else's opinion on here. And that's what you can visually see with Bitcoin. And you look at the comments on each one of these lines. People are going through it line by line and voicing concerns, voicing contention, voicing how important what is and what isn't. And there's responses to it. So there's a huge amount of voices, right? There's a huge amount of voices within here, all with their own unique perspective. And you can take information, it's not really about, I mean, it's becoming about sides. And this is unfortunately something that happens with political systems. And I would say this is a political system, unfortunately, as it has a lot of political characteristics. It has camps, teams, individuals, ideas, beliefs, future prospects of what to do and what not to do, and the popularity contest of individual ideas and beliefs, right? So that it becomes political in a sense, because that is essentially what politics is. All right, so we got something else here. How will Softfork force op return limit on Mara miners? Can you please describe this process, how ideally it should go? Well, if the Softfork was implemented, essentially, if the vast majority of hash rate agreed and node runners and everybody activated the Softfork, essentially they would, so say all the nodes are essentially what lay down the rules, as we saw with the user activated Softfork of SegWit. 95% of nodes ran the update to activate SegWit. And essentially, if a miner was mining a transaction that without the new updated software, the nodes would reject it. They would say, no, that's not valid with my node because I'm running this new updated version and it's more restrictive. And you have something within there that is less restrictive that I am just seeing, rejecting as not valid with my new node consensus. So it's all about incentives, right? So if enough people adopted this soft fork and there was an op return limit, which I'm still trying to figure out like how that even works. I think there actually, yeah, okay. So there is, I believe it's limited to 83 bytes, right? In the software fork here. So if miners, which a lot of miners or some miners and some mining pools are now running V30, which has a policy in there to allow for larger op returns. So if they see a transaction that has that in there, they'll include it in a block, they'll mine a block, they'll then relay it to all the nodes. And within that block, there is a transaction that has an op return that's larger than 83. And all the nodes running the soft fork now say, oh, this block is invalid because there's a transaction in here that has an op return that's higher than 83. And my node rules that that's not consensus because the soft fork update. So now Amara's block is being rejected by a bunch of nodes. And if it's rejected by nodes of other miners and that miner rejects it and is still building on the older block, and then they hit a block and they have the vast majority of nodes running that soft fork, and they hit a block that doesn't have an op return transaction with higher than 83 bytes, and they start relaying it, and all the nodes say, yes, this block is valid. Every transaction in here reaches consensus. And now all the nodes and miners are, or the vast majority, are building on this other block and not Mara's or not F2 pool or any of the other miners that are running V30 that have a larger than 83 byte op return. That now becomes or has a higher chance, and then another block gets added to it. And in that case, that is the longest chain. And Mara's block that did not get successfully relayed and built upon now becomes orphaned. So Mara loses out on all the rewards, the block subsidy and everything, because that's no longer the longest chain. So essentially, there's a financial incentive for miners to do what the nodes want them to do. And if they don't, they have a higher chance of getting orphan blocks, which means less income, which is exactly opposite of what a miner wants. So it becomes incentive to run what the vast majority of nodes want them to run. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, who is core captured by and whom is Luke? Yeah, enlighten us. There's a lot of conspiracies out there. I mean, there's conspiracies about chain code labs and being funding all the core devs, and people think that Luke is owned by the FBI and all this crazy stuff. So I don't know. We'll see about that. But we already have this situation. So if we could persuade version 30 miners to run knots SW software, we could solve it already. Yeah. Essentially, we did not reach the agreement. There was not enough people were convinced that filters are effective, that filters work, which this is the thing that's interesting about filters, right? Is ultimately they are not effective if people don't use them, and they are effective if people do. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy either way. And you're sort of you're sort of on the losing side if you believe they work and nobody else believes they work. You're sort of alone with that, right? So, and it's not about just belief, it's about actually using them and running them. So yeah, it's like the filters are effective. But ultimately, because they're not absolutely effective, people have deemed them not to work. But they do work on individual blocks, right? There's blocks that are mined by Ocean. There's blocks that are mined by, different mining pools that have different policy defaults or settings, and the blocks look different because of that. So obviously they have an effect, but they're not ultimately effective at eliminating certain types of transactions, which, in my opinion, is good because ultimately we want to align all the incentives to exist in a certain fashion so that we get the outcomes that we want. I think being heavy-handed with rule changes on the consensus layer is a recipe for too much change, which is a recipe for vulnerability with what should be the most secure system in the world. I am very skeptical of this soft fork. I respect a lot of people that agree with it, more so than people that disagree with it, actually. But I remain skeptical because I do not fully understand it. And it is changing the consensus level, even if temporary. It is changing the consensus level in ways that could have unforeseen circumstances, as Taproot and SegWit both had. So the temporary nature of it makes it so that that could be okay because it's temporarily going to change something. If there's some sort of exploit, it can be changed, it can be adapted, it can be fixed, maybe. But again, this is just, we're sort of in the early innings, right? Like the convincing people that the policy changes really mattered and could have an effect. It had a massive effect on people running nodes, caring about Bitcoin, getting deeper into the problems of what could happen. I think that's really important. I don't know what the fuck this is, zombie guy. That's just going. That just looks like spam to me. Anyway, I think that had a really positive effect overall. It had this silver lining effect of people caring more about what's going on with Bitcoin. The Bitcoiners caring more about what goes on with Bitcoin. It's been fairly toxic, but it's been the early innings. Like that was like the pregame. We are now in inning one, right? This is now contentious. This is being talked about in a real way. There are people who are on the core side saying, I agree that we got to get rid of spam, but we need a soft fork to do it. There's been a lot of people calling for soft forks. Personally, I've been one that's been calling not for a soft fork. I kind of felt like we could fight this at the filter level and the policy level. And that's a battle that's over, basically, as far as I see it. Like that's a battle that's done. I don't know if we continue with that battle. I think people will continue to run knots, but ultimately version 30 is out there, and now the people that really care about this are saying, okay, well, we sort of have this ticking time bomb until something goes into the chain in op return in a contiguous fashion that becomes problematic in these ways that we believe so, either morally or legally. So that is why there's this soft fork. I'm very skeptical, very risk averse to anything that's rushed. And this was all sort of kicked into the open by a default change on Core's implementation, which are people are now running, right? Large pools, Mara, they're all running it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that things are going to get. I think things are going to get crazier. I think people are going to start to understand that this is incredibly unlikely to be running a. I think this is incredibly unlikely to create a chain split and create an airdrop, as people are calling it, of knots coins or something like that. Yeah, that's just not really usually what happens with that's not really what happens with soft forks. Chain splits happen, but they'll usually happen with a temporary nature where the longest chain just continues on. All right, so we got a couple more comments here. This is why Zcash is rising. We need built-in privacy in Bitcoin yesterday. Nope, we don't need that on the base layer. And there will be some opcodes that will enable additional privacy features, but Zcash is not a solution for that. Zcash is rising because of the VC pump and dump. 100% agree. Likely, these privacy coins. Okay, this is a really good theory. Magoo Hodl had this theory on Twitter where he talked about how it's possible that the government of the US has in their market structure bill something to say about privacy coins, which will delist in the US all these privacy coins. Of course, there'll still be an underground market for these things and they'll have their utility or whatever, but basically none of that utility is any greater than, say, Lightning with Bitcoin. And that will cause a massive crash in those. And because of that happening soon, sort of the last actual ability to pump and dump these things with any sort of liquidity and market, be able to buy and sell these things on, say, Kraken and all this stuff, right? That is a pretty good conspiracy. I do think that's possible. Yeah, I kind of sort of just talked about how yeah, Satoshi Nakamoto here says, make sure you run knots. I have a backup plan and something, but that's for me to know and for you to see. Okay. Awesome. Really like your work, Satoshi. Make sure you run knots. Yeah. I mean, run whatever implementation you want. I would be slow to upgrade right now. I would be, if there's upgrades coming out, or updates coming out, I would just be cautious about any of them. Because of this Softfork implementation. Like, I don't think that would be the case that anybody sneaks something in at this point. People are pretty transparent with open source code and pretty sleuthy at figuring out what's going on in the code. But I would just be like, if you're running an old version of Bitcoin Core that doesn't have any vulnerabilities, yeah, you could change the default. You could change the default to 42 if you wanted, which is default for knots. You could download knots if you wanted, as there's additional patches on there as well. For miners, I think knots is great. I think in general, there's nothing wrong with running knots. There's nothing wrong with running an older version of Core. I would be very hesitant to update to Core 30. I don't think there's any reason to do that at this point. There's no additional upgrades or updates in there that are important whatsoever. All right. I've been running knots since 2024, and the second someone mentions a fork, it raises red flags, especially when they mention rollbacks. Yeah, of course. And that's exactly what I said as well. My stance is incredibly cautious when it comes towards this. There's been talks about since whatever, April, the beginning of this policy implementation, the sort of the rejection of Core 30 from a certain side of Bitcoiners, there's been the talk of a fork, right? And it's been sort of muted or just not taken too seriously and all of that. And I have been pretty against that personally. Yeah, cautious is a good way to be. Sheezy just made a start 9 knots node. Thanks for your videos. They helped fight the spam. Cool. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I got a couple videos out there how to do it on a mini PC. And I actually have a video coming out about Umbrel as well, if anybody wants to figure out how to run that. It's the CIA, LOL. Yeah, Satoshi is the CIA. They Core 30 claim now that consensus already allows large op returns. There's a slipstream way of relaying large op return transactions. I don't see this to solve until hard limit for op return. Yeah, so there is consensus. There's no consensus rules against large op returns, and it has always been that mempool policy has mitigated or stopped the vast majority of there being an option to relay these and get them accepted into blocks from miners. So you've always had to go out of band to something like Slipstream, which is Mara's service, to include, if you wanted to, a large op return. So yeah, it does actually kind of make sense to, like, if large op returns are a problem, which a lot of people think they are because of the continuous nature of them, because it's one space to be able to relay a lot of data in a specific in a human readable or software readable way that isn't broken up into chunks, that isn't sort of forced in a hidden way, which is the way of other like inscriptions and stuff is data chunked up and sort of hacked in. So that's sort of the argument there for knots, which I think is a compelling argument. Actually, I think that is true that op return, the data in op return is fundamentally different, and it is sort of more allowed because of version 30. But it's always been allowed at a consensus layer, and there's been well, not I shouldn't say always. As far as I know, it's been allowed in at consensus layer, and it's been mitigated and stopped in two ways: through default filters on core since 2014, I believe it is. They first introduced that, and through the cost aspect of it. So there's larger fees to include data in an op return. So people want to do it the cheaper way. They do it through fake pub keys, I guess, or inscriptions or something. Then they are without argument. We can already do it because consensus allows it. Yeah, but the problem is here is that yes, consensus allows it, but there's no easy way to relay until version 30 large op return transactions. So I say that there's no easy way to do it because the easiest way is to just create the transaction, relay it on your own node, have it relay through the network, get accepted at a reasonable rate. If you go out of band, you're paying at least double, right? So there's a harder way to do it. And as anybody that develops systems should know, when you make things harder, you create negative incentives. So you're creating a fence. Yes, somebody can climb the fence, but it takes more effort to climb the fence than to walk through nothing to enter somebody's yard, right? So that's the idea there, is that filters are not stopping somebody, but they're creating an incentive to not do something. All right. Yep, I kind of agree here with Naughty Vlogs. We should not roll back the chain on Bitcoin. And I think that they're not really wanting to do that, but there sort of is that weird part in there that says like this is a way to like sort of force the activation of it. If but then I think it would have to reach consensus as well, like who's pulling the trigger to activate it based on a large op return full of something illicit, right? What's this? Booth, ChatGPT, and Groose suggest running. Not sure what you're saying there. Both ChatGPT and something else suggest running what? The ads on someone that would use the Satoshi Nakamoto as their handle. That's funny. To your earlier statement, I currently run both Bitcoin Core node and an Umbrel Bitcoin Core node. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine I'm curious, Joel, have you upgraded or updated to version 30, which I think is updatable on Umbrel at this point? I'm not sure. I don't run Core on my Umbrel, which I currently have an Umbrel set up. Let's see. I currently run Knots on my Umbrel, which is here, fully synchronized. Look at that, 21 peers. Woo! Taking in all that data. It is, and I run 30 on both. What was your I'm curious to know why you updated to 30. What was your reasoning for that? Just because there was an update, or you also, I think you're a miner, right? So was it to something about mining? Yeah, to me, I just don't see any compelling reason to update to Core 30, especially. All right, so we are coming up to the end of the show here. We are going to do a couple more tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well. If Joel gets back to me, we'll answer, or we'll talk a little bit more about that. And yeah, we'll continue on. This is cool comment. I got that strange feeling when Satoshi Nakamoto just chimed in. Imagine that 1 in a trillion chance that this is the real Satoshi lurking around. It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. Mining, and you will have to eventually, right? Yeah, eventually, but like years down the road. There's people running 26, 28, like 24, core 24, I should say, old versions of core that remain. That oftentimes actually they'll do updates. I think they did an update 28.3. They'll fix older versions of core as well for people that are running it, so you can remain using your older versions, and there's like additional patches. So there's no rush. Like, the way I think about it with software in general is they're sandboxing the testing of these things, and they're going to try to replicate real life interactions, real life problems that could come up, or real life scenarios with the software. But there can be these unexpected variables, or they're really good about testing stuff, but there can just be unforeseen things. And I think that it's a really good idea not to rush to update software, just in general, unless there's some serious, like, catastrophic thing that you would know about. Like, you would know there's a serious reason to update. But if the reason to update is, well, eventually you're going to have to update, I would wait. I would wait, because you never know. It's more risky to update soon, like really quickly on a new update, than to run the current, right? Yeah, and you're right. There were some additional updates as well, beyond just the change to the op return default. But again, I didn't see any of those being anywhere near like catastrophic or anything like that. So I would personally and it's not just about Core 30 or anything like that. I would just say, in general, if you don't have to update, I would wait a couple months before updating anything, just to make sure that anything that gets worked out does get worked out. Satoshi Nakamoto is still running version 1 node. That's awesome. And I think you can mine directly with that. The node is also the miner. So you just press mine, and you're probably cranking away a couple hashes with your old PC. Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. All right, let's do a couple more tosses in the Bitcoin wishing well. This has been an interesting show. Difficult for me, as it's like I still haven't done the full research on a lot of this stuff. So I definitely know I'm missing a lot. There's a lot more for me to learn here. And I think that's the case for like almost everybody here. Like, nobody fully grasps everything, because there's, conversations that come up that need to be addressed, conversation points and things people probably haven't thought of with this Softfork implementation. I do think it's kind of funny that I made a video last week about what a Softfork is, and I just felt it in the air, basically, and rumblings around a little bit, and boom, Softfork next week. All right, guys, we're going to throw a couple more points in the wishing well here. 210,000 sats coming up. Let's take a look at this. If you have a Lightning wallet out and you're the first person to scan, you'll get 498 sats. Michael Sully is in the chat. Accurate. This stuff is crazy complex, and I've worked as an engineer for 13 years. Yeah, it is. And the code isn't even there yet. It's just a proposal. It's just the ideas of what is possible, and like what we could do at a consensus layer to limit data in certain forms, and how that will affect current holders, future holders, and usability of Bitcoin. There's a lot of people talking about, the OpCat and OpCTV, that, they would love the conversation to be around them, and covenants, and the ability to do additional layer 2s that are scaling solutions that are only available to people that are only available to Bitcoin if those changes happen. And that conversation is not happening. It's been completely taken over by this. So we'll see if that conversation happens, but we'll see. We'll see. Another toss in the wishing well, everybody. 490. I think the Satoshi Nakamoto AI here has got a good concept right here. Remember to hold your keys to your coins. I don't think Satoshi holds his own keys to his coins. Actually, I think, you know, a lot, you know, these coins were mined to different wallets every $50 or every $50, every 50 Bitcoin. And do you think he kept track of all those keys? I doubt it. I doubt it. Joel, got to run. Yeah. And we're at an hour, so I'm going to be ending the stream anyway. It was great seeing you here. Thanks for your contribution. Thanks for signing up. The membership gifts, incredible. I appreciate it a lot. And you said you're sending another gift to a random person. Wow, awesome! Look at that. Joel's the man. It's interesting to hear that you already upgraded to version 30. Yeah. I mean, I don't think. I mean, really, it's a default policy. You can change that policy if you felt like you didn't want to relay op returns that are larger than 83 bytes. You could still do that. Satoshi consolidated his coins. Wow. There's just a massive wallet out there that nobody knows about. I don't think so, Satoshi. I don't think so. We have fakes to. Oh wow, Craig Wright is here too. Fake Satoshi, one stop only after a sentence. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time. We have a bunch of cool videos coming out this week. Actually, I'll give you a quick little update about what the videos are coming out. I know this has already been talked about, and I'm late to things because I have an uploading schedule. But here are some of the videos that are available to members already that might come out this week. I got a bunch of them queued up. This one's called The Genius of the Difficulty Adjustment in Bitcoin Makes It Unlike Anything Else. That's a long title, but yeah. That video I was cooking on. I was cooking. Did the CIA create Bitcoin? Yes, I know other people have already talked about that. People have already talked about it, but I have my own perspective on that. And I have a video called The Simplest Way to Use a Lightning Network with On-Chain Bitcoin. This is a really, really cool way of being able to send on-chain Bitcoin to a wallet, not do anything else, not have to understand the Lightning Network, anything else, not have to do atomic swaps, not have to implement anything, and being able to send from that wallet to Lightning, Liquid, eCash, whatever you want, Bitcoin related. And it takes it from the on-chain balance without you having to do anything. How to back up a Start9. This is incredibly important. That's important to a select few that run Start9. How to flash Start9 4.0. That's the newest version, which is in alpha, which is you know, basically completely for developers and testers only. So very niche video as well. And how to flash Umbrel. These are all available to watch early as members. Maybe you got gifted one of these members from Joel. Maybe you got to sign up. It's only a couple bucks, or maybe you got to wait. A few little things here. Harold Finney. Not sure. Okay. All right. And his partners are Satoshi. I and the upload and the unseen programmer you don't know. I am the one who protected Harold when he was lose his disability for uploading. Okay. All right. The CIA thing is still a great topic. I have pre-coiners asking me about that all the time. Still to this day. Yeah, I've talked to a few pre-coiners that are like, I don't know. I think the NSA created it or the CIA created it. I've had those conversations, and I'm like, yeah, just doesn't matter who. It matters what it is. What do you think about BRICS being for gold and USA and Western globe being for BTC and crypto? Do you have an opinion? Yeah, that's probably a good idea for a video. I will address that in a full video at some point. I appreciate that question. But we're at an hour 5, and I usually only do an hour. So I will answer that in a full video. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.